Clear story of the prophet Zephaniah, and the day of the lodging in the days of King Josiah of Judah. A prophet named Zephaniah arose to deliver a message from the Lord. Zephaniah was of royal descent, tracing his lineage back to Hezekiah, one of Judah's most righteous kings. His prophetic ministry took place during a time of spiritual decline, as the people of Judah had turned away from God to worship idols and engage in corrupt practices. Zephaniah's message was urgent and sobering. The day of the Lord was coming, a day of judgment and reckoning. Zephaniah began his prophecy with a stark warning. "I will sweep away everything from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. I will sweep away both man and beast. I will sweep away the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, and the idols that cause the wicked to stumble." The Lord's judgment would not be limited to Judah. It would extend to all nations. No one would escape the consequences of their sins. The prophet specifically addressed the sins of Judah. The people had turned to idolatry, worshipping Baal and other false gods. They had adopted pagan practices and consulted astrologers. The leaders and princes had become like roaring lions, oppressing the poor and exploiting the vulnerable. The priests had defiled the temple, and the prophets had spoken lies. Zephaniah declared that the Lord would punish these sins, and his wrath would be poured out like fire. Zephaniah described the day of the Lord as a day of darkness and despair. He said, "That day will be a day of wrath, a day of distress and anguish, a day of trouble and ruin, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness. The people's wealth would not save them, nor would their fortified cities." The Lord's judgment would be thorough and inescapable. Yet, in the midst of this dire warning, Zephaniah also offered a message of hope. He called the people to repentance, urging them to seek the Lord. He said, "Seek the Lord, all you humble of the land, you who do what he commands. Seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you will be sheltered on the day of the Lord's anger." For those who turned back to God, there was the promise of mercy and protection. Zephaniah also prophesied about the future restoration of God's people. He spoke of a time when the Lord would gather the remnant of Israel and bring them back to their land. He said, "At that time I will gather you. At that time I will bring you hope. I will give you honor and praise among all the peoples of the earth when I restore your fortunes before your very eyes." The Lord would remove the proud and haughty, leaving a humble and faithful people who would trust in his name. The prophet's message culminated in a beautiful picture of God's love and faithfulness. Zephaniah declared, "The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing." This promise pointed to the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan in Jesus Christ, who would bring salvation and restoration to his people. Zephaniah's prophecy serves as a powerful reminder of God's justice and mercy. It warns us of the consequences of sin and calls us to repentance. It challenges us to seek righteousness and humility, trusting in the Lord's salvation. And it offers hope for the future, assuring us that God's love and faithfulness will ultimately prevail. The story of Zephaniah inspires us to live with a sense of urgency, recognizing that the day of the Lord is coming. It calls us to examine our hearts, turn away from sin, and seek the Lord with all our heart. And it reminds us that no matter how dark the world may seem, God's promises are sure, and his love will never fail.